All right, guys, things are getting pretty serious right now with China and Russia. Take a look here. Also, in this video, we will be going over from the Department of Defense how Russia is reportedly supplying enriched uranium to China for weapons. We'll go over that here in this video. China's new foreign minister says conflict with China is inevitable unless the U.S. changes course. Beijing's new foreign minister warns, and I don't think the U.S. is going to be changing course because of what China says anytime soon. Yeah, and this comes as China's President Xi just started his unprecedented third term. Remember that they're not even supposed to have third terms as presidents there, but they basically just changed the laws, or he changed the laws for his own self. Similar to how our presidents are only allowed 2 terms, it would be like a current president here just changing the laws and saying, nope, I'm going to stay the president, whether you like it or not. Yeah. Here's what our Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, just said about Russia and China. Take a listen to this.
In brief, the CCP represents both the leading and most consequential threat to U.S. national security and leadership globally, and its intelligence-specific ambitions and capabilities make it, for us, our most serious and consequential intelligence rival. During the past year, the threat has been additionally complicated by a deepening collaboration with Russia, which also remains an area, obviously, of intense focus for the intelligence community. In fact, we were last here for our ATA hearing last year. It was only a few weeks after Russia's unprovoked and illegal invasion of Ukraine. And now we are over a year into the war, which is reshaping not only Russia's global relationships and strategic standing, but also our own, strengthening our alliances and partnerships in ways that President Putin almost certainly did not anticipate, often precipitating the very events that he was trying to avoid, such as Sweden and Finland's petition to join NATO. And on the battlefield, there is currently a grinding attritional war in which neither side has a definitive military advantage. And the day-to-day fighting is over hundreds of meters, currently focused largely in Donetsk, as Russia tries to capture the remainder of the oblast. The Russians are making incremental progress on Bakhmut, which is not a particularly strategic objective, but are otherwise facing considerable constraints, including personnel and ammunition shortages, dysfunction within the military's leadership, exhaustion, as well as morale challenges. And even as the Russian offensive continues, they are experiencing high casualty rates. Putin is likely better understanding the limits of what his military is capable of achieving and appears to be focused on more modest military objectives for now. Export controls and sanctions are hampering Russia's war effort, particularly by restricting access to foreign components necessary to produce weapon systems. And if Russia does not initiate a mandatory mobilization and identify substantial third-party ammunition supplies, it will be increasingly challenging for them to sustain even the current level of offensive operations in the coming months, and consequently, they may fully shift to holding and defending the territories they now occupy. In short, we do not foresee the Russian military recovering enough this year to make major territorial gains, but Putin most likely calculates that time works in his favor and that prolonging the war, including with potential pauses in the fighting, may be his best remaining pathway to eventually securing Russia's strategic interests in Ukraine, even if it takes years. And Ukraine, of course, also faces challenges. Ukraine's prospects for success in a major spring offensive will probably hinge on a number of factors. And at present, the Ukrainian armed forces remain locked in a struggle to defend against Russian offenses across eastern Ukraine. And while these Russian assaults are costly for Russia, the extent to which Ukrainian forces are having to draw down their reserves and equipment, as well as suffer further casualties, will all likely factor into Ukraine's ability to go on the offensive later this spring. And the IC continues to monitor Putin's reactions and his nuclear saber rattling. Our analysts assess that his current posturing is intended to deter the West from providing additional support to Ukraine as he weighs a further escalation of the conflict. He probably will still remain confident that Russia can eventually militarily defeat Ukraine and wants to prevent Western support from tipping the balance and forcing a conflict with NATO. And of course, the already considerable human toll of the conflict is only increasing. In addition to the many tens of thousands casualties suffered by the Russians and Ukrainian militaries, more than 8 million people have been forced to flee Ukraine since Russia invaded. And there is widespread reporting of atrocities committed by Russian forces, including deliberate strikes against non-military targets, such as Ukraine's civilian population and civilian infrastructure, particularly its energy facilities and electric grid. Russia and its proxy groups almost certainly are using so-called filtration operations to detain and forcibly deport tens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians to Russia. The IC is engaged with other parts of the U.S. government to document and hold Russia and Russian actors accountable for their actions.
Yeah, so she says the war could go on for years. And honestly, that's very likely. I don't want to, I hate to think that, but the problem here is that the two sides, the negotiating table is like broken in half because the two sides are like, Putin says, okay, well, my peace terms are you give us 20% of Ukraine and then we can call it a day. And Ukraine's like, we're not going to give you our land. That would be like the United States giving up Alaska to Russia, which Russia has actually said we could do that. Russian lawmakers have said that we could take Alaska back. Okay. Ukraine just is not going to give up their land. That's why they're fighting back. Okay. So like, I've seen a bunch of people say, oh, they should go to the peace table. Well, the peace table, there's no, the negotiation talks are, they're just not even comprehensible. So this could go on for a long time. And Russia's just going to keep throwing troops at the problem. And think about why this is even happening. Why is Russia even invading Ukraine to begin with? They just want to take over the land. They just want to take over the resources. They just want to put old Russia back the way it was. And these countries don't want to be a part of Putin's regime. And remember, they've already leaked by accident that they want to take over Moldova. They've already taken over Crimea several years ago. And now they've leaked that they want to incorporate and take over Belarus. But, Belarus is already kind of a puppet country of theirs. But that could become part of Russia as well. Now, whether or not the Belarusian president is keen to that idea or not, we'll see, because then he wouldn't be the president anymore. He would essentially lose his power. And you can see here, one by one, all these countries are one way or another being taken over by Russia. Yeah, and this is why Finland and Sweden are like, yeah, we need to join NATO. Now, there's a problem with a couple of the other countries in NATO because they all have to unanimously approve this, and it's kind of sad because they're financially just kind of not saying yeah, which is kind of sad. It's ridiculous because they honestly, Finland and Sweden, pretty decent countries. They should let them in before there's even more problems, and it strengthens NATO as well. But this is kind of the problem here, is that we're seeing China and Russia. In fact, take a look here. Okay, also, as you can see here, this is directly from the U.S. Department of Defense official government website. They're saying here, Russia reportedly supplying enriched uranium to China. Yeah. Various open source outlets reported how Rosatom is providing highly enriched uranium for Chinese fast breeder reactors, said the U.S. official during a posture hearing today at the House Armed Services Committee on Strategic Forces. Rosatom is a Russian state corporation that specializes in nuclear energy. Quote, it is very troubling to see Russia and China cooperating on this, says John Plum, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy. Quote, they have talking points around it, but there's no getting around the fact that breeder reactors are plutonium, and plutonium is for weapons. So I think that the department is concerned, and of course it matches our concerns about China's increased expansion of its nuclear forces as well, because you need more plutonium for weapons. China and Russia have placed nuclear weapons, space warfare, and long-range strikes at the center of their strategies to counter the United States and its allies and partners, he said. He also said that China is engaged in a significant and fast-paced expansion and diversification of its nuclear forces. Also, Russia and China view space as a war-fighting domain. China also has an ever-growing inventory of sophisticated long-range strike systems, putting U.S. forces at risk at greater and greater distances, Plum said. Yeah, again, this is John F. Plum, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy. Yeah, so you can let me know your thoughts. Is something brewing here? Are we on the brink of World War III or a Cold War? Hopefully not, but you can see here, it's literally on a daily basis. We have our government talking about it, their government talking about it, Russia talking about it, Russia, China, North Korea, all talking about this. Why are we getting closer and closer? Why is this such a heightened environment? And how do we de-escalate this? And will the war in Ukraine be going on for years? How do you stop it? The problem is Putin seems like there's not going to be any giving up to Putin. And even if, remember, Ukrainian President Zelensky said he thinks that Putin's end will come from his own people. They will off him. The problem is I think that Putin's next successor may be the former president who was just president right before him. And if they make him president again, he's just as bad as Putin. He literally says the same type of stuff. It could be just status quo right again. So if there's no regime change there, if there's no status quo change, what could happen? It just depends on if the other elites in Russia get tired of losing or tired of just spending billions and just losing billions and billions of dollars for making no progress in Ukraine in just years of war. And remember that basically all the rest of the world has pulled their businesses out of Russia, and they basically their economy has gone back 50 years. I mean, there's no McDonald's, there's no MasterCard, there's no Visa, there's no, all these businesses have said we're not going to do business in Russia anymore. And likely it'll take years to, bring that back. It's not just going to the war's going to be over and they're just going to jump right back in. So think about all this kind of, regression that they've had as a country. So let me know your thoughts here in the comments. I'll keep you up to date here. If you're new to our channel, make sure to click the subscribe button, then the bell icon so you don't miss out on new videos that come out here on our YouTube channel every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you appreciate these videos, don't forget to hit the like button for us. Here's some videos you should watch next. Here's a really good video. The Fed just had a conversation with Congress, which was shocking. You can click right here for that video. And also here's a video that the Speaker of the House just said could affect our country and could bring it down, actually. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.